Come set your rule and reign in our hearts again. Increase in us, we pray. Unveil why we're made.
This time of year with an election coming, politicians are always looking out for trick questions. Something that can trigger a misstep or cause them to say something they regret, or something that proves out to be an untruth. And reporters are always trying to dig to get them to say something like that so that it could make big news. And trick questions that put people on the spot have been around for as long as there has been public issues and leaders offering solutions to those issues. This one, the Pharisees put to Jesus, had an obvious double edge. The issue of paying tax to the emperor was one of the hottest topics in the Middle East in Jesus' day. I mean, imagine if you woke up one day and discovered that people from the other side of the world had marched into your country and demanded you pay taxes as a reward for having your land stolen. That sort of thing still causes riots and revolutions and lots of resentment. And we see the same thing happen throughout the course of history. Jesus points out that there are two worlds in which we live, or two spheres of influence, the religious and the political. Where one begins and one ends is always open for debate. We just witnessed it this week in Houston, in the city of Houston, Texas. If you know the story, the city council had passed an ordinance that required restrooms to be gender neutral. In other words, if a man feels like a woman, he can use the ladies' room and vice versa. And a lot of the citizens were unhappy about that, and so they circulated a petition to change that ordinance. And that greatly upset the mayor of the city. And as a result, she has since subpoenaed the sermons and the speeches of a whole lot of the pastors in Houston to see if they were advocating against her ordinance. And again, calls to mind, where does one sphere of influence end and another begin? Where does the political end and the religious begin, and so forth? It's not an easy question to answer. It's rather messy, and will probably never have a perfect solution. But that's why the gospel this week is so important, because Jesus reminds us of that simple fact, that there are two worlds in which we live, and where ultimately is our allegiance. Like the people of the gospel, we struggle to keep the lines clear between the two, and the truth is, we know it's just a messy thing. And so Jesus' answer to the trick question wasn't meant to be a perfect solution for all times and in every circumstance throughout history on how to handle the division between faith and politics. But it is a reminder to us who are disciples to be clear about whom we serve and what we are giving to God and what we are giving to Caesar. And the truth is, Jesus is pointing out that the kingdom of God is eternal. It will outlast the kingdom of this world, so we have to be careful about our allegiances. And that's what we do on a Sunday like the People Raiser Sunday. And we challenge ourselves to answer the question, how well or not am I giving to God the things that belong to God? Now, we've been doing this for the past 10 years, so I think that you really get the point. And over the years, as I've witnessed the response of people to our ministry fair, our People Raiser, the call to serve, to give back to the Lord with increase, sort of seeing four different categories of people emerge. And the first category are those who just flat out refuse to get involved. Remember last week's parable of the wedding feast. The king sent everyone an invitation, but many people didn't respond. And when they were asked why, they had all sorts of excuses. They were too busy, too preoccupied. Some just resented the king, and so forth and so on. And if that's you, you might want to consider whether or not you should even be in the pew, or whether you should step aside and make room for others. There's just no easy way around it. My job is not to enable bad spirituality, but to challenge people to live the full call of the gospel. So think about it. Will you answer the call that the King gives in this invitation to serve in his kingdom? The second category are those who they will do something. It may be a one-time deal, but at least they're embarking on the journey. And the challenge for you, if that's you, if you're kind of now and then, ask yourself, what's preventing me from making more of a commitment and sticking to it? Do I have a level of fear? Have I just rationalized and justified way too many things? Is my life just too busy and I need to reorder my priorities? And the third category are those who will make a commitment for the first time. We've all been there. It's a little uncertain. We're not so sure how well it will work out. We're not sure if we can do it, if we're worthy, and so forth. But our hearts are definitely in the right place. Because once we commit, then great things can happen. Because we are basically saying to God, here I am, Lord, use me in whichever way you want. And you'll be surprised at how God does that. And the final group are those who embrace stewardship as a way of life. Those who don't need to be asked, but rather are the ones who ask first. How can I serve? What do you need help with? And I often wonder what really motivates people who have really embraced the idea of stewardship and service. Is it just that they're a bunch of neurotic people, obsessive compulsive people that just have to do? I don't think so. Are they people who just fear the pains of hell? Again, that's really not a sufficient motivation. Rather, those who truly serve authentically and willingly lay down their lives for others are motivated by one simple thing, and that's gratitude. Gratitude for the gift that God has given to you. Just a recognition that everything I have, I've had to receive from somewhere else. And ultimately, it all comes to us from God. So our stewardship is really a response to that gratitude. It's an overwhelming love that moves us to serve. And I remember learning this example very early on in my priesthood, when I was a chaplain in the prisons. And in one of the prisons, I had an inmate named Anthony. I can still picture him. He was about 6'3", big guy, not real smart, but pleasant enough. And one day he came to my office and he had a broken arm. He was having a real hard time getting to see the prison doctor. And he was obviously in a lot of pain. He said, Father, can you help me? Can you help me get to see the doctor? I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. A few days later, I saw him again. He had a cast on his arm and had been set and fixed by the doctor. And he was very, very happy. And he running up to me, Father, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you. My arm got fixed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I said, no, it's no problem, Anthony. I'm happy to make sure that you're okay. And he said, well, I just want to give you something. Inmates don't have any pockets on their uniforms because they could hide stuff. So when they want to carry something, they tend to hide it in their waistband right next to their crotch. So he goes down there, he pulls out one of those Little Debbie cupcakes that he got from the commissary. And he said, here, thank you, thank you. And I said, oh, that's not necessary. He said, no, Father, I really, really want you to take it. And I realized he didn't have any money, and commissary only came once a week, and this was probably one of the few treats that he could get in prison. And so I took it gratefully and said, thank you. He said, are you going to eat it? And I said, well, I'll eat it at lunchtime. He said, well, somebody might take it from you. These inmates aren't so nice. So I ate it. It's kind of melted, but it was okay. But his response was just overwhelming gratitude for something very simple. And that's really, when you think of it, how our response to God should be as well. When we try to answer the question, are we giving to God the things that belong to God? What belongs to God is everything. It's our very lives, our very self. Do we have sufficient gratitude that spurs us to just automatically, spontaneously give so that we could build up the kingdom of Christ and be loyal members of his kingdom here on earth and in the world to come?